Hey everyone. It's been a while since I've uploaded. I am a bit absent on this channel, especially this year. I had different jobs, just a bunch of different things that's happened. And even now, it's harder and harder to upload just because the things that I want to upload they're really time consuming. And I just don't have a lot of that time. The new job that I'm having, I'm constantly editing and shooting videos, probably about 4 or 5 a week, sometimes 10, and it starts to get really hard um, when you're in that space and you're constantly on a computer and you're constantly editing. You're I don't know. You just you want to step away from it as much as possible when you don't have to. So that's kind of what's happening. Um, I'm starting to find a balance, and I think hopefully I'll be able to um, put out more videos where I'm testing cameras and showing more filmmaking stuff. But just wanted to let you know that it's not all just going to be reaction stuff. But with that said, this is a reaction video to the OM-5 anyway. It has been released and it's not exactly what we were hoping for, but it's everything that we should have expected. It definitely follows the trend of the EM5 Mark III and simply ports the previous flagship model's internals into a smaller body. In this case, the previous flagship model was the EM1 Mark III. It takes those internals and puts them in the EM5 body. Yeah, everyone's complaining it's the same sensor as the EM5 Mark III. It is, but that's the same sensor that's in the EM1 Mark III and the EM1X. That's a slack that I can forgive. This camera's getting way too much slack for using a much older sensor in it. This is actually a pretty common practice. If not an older sensor, it's usually something that's older technology or a sensor from an older sensor family. Again, common practice as usual for cheaper models. You can't expect new tech in a budget model that's under $1,500 in the world today. Maybe in 2019 you can kind of get away with it, maybe, but definitely not in 2022. If you look at the Canon R10, I'm going to use the Canon R10 in this specific scenario just because if I was looking for a new budget model camera, I would be looking at the R10. That's a newly released camera. It came out this year. And that sensor is actually from the Canon M6, which is 5 years old. And that sensor family is 7 years old because that sensor family started with the Canon M5, so about 7 years ago. If you look at the Canon R7, another newly released camera, that has a sensor in it that's from the Canon M6 Mark II, which is 3 years old. Sony's is known for reusing their sensors over and over and over again, and other camera manufacturers uses Sony sensors, and they use them over and over and over again. Even Panasonic, the GH5 Mark II uses a sensor that was released 5 years ago, and that's a camera that's still $1,400 brand new. You could say that has more features, but not really. That's only more features in video. The OM-5 outpaces that camera in photo, leagues ahead in the photo capabilities. So this is honestly just a moot point to look at, especially in cameras that are under $1,500. Sorry, $1,500. An important point to make though is cameras made in the last decade and even longer, honestly, are all going to give you great images. Image quality is going to be very good no matter what camera you get. If you're needing or wanting a new camera, image quality shouldn't be at the top of your concerns. You really should be looking at other things outside of IQ. Things like speed, if you need that, handling, that's important to me. Codecs, autofocus speed, higher megapixels if you need that. Basically, features that help you with the job at hand. If you're just taking photos and want something that has a bit more character, I would look older. A lot of these newer sensors, they're all kind of looking the same. They all have kind of the same stats, dynamic range. There's so few differences in between them. If you want something with real character, look for those older digital cameras like digicams. They offer a really unique look, especially if you're looking at it today. Watch a few YouTubers that look at these older digital cameras. They are authentically fun. One channel that I highly recommend is 1 Month 2 Cameras. She actually just had an interview with Sofi Lee, an amazing digicam shooter, and actually I think she has a site dedicated to digicams. I think it's called digicam.love. I can't remember on the top of my head right now, but there's so much more about the camera outside of the sensor. Sure, the sensor is going to help. The sensor tech helps, but I mean, with other aspects of it's going to help with other aspects of the camera. But IQ is going to be affected so minimally. Each camera, each sensor is going to give you something wonderful and something unique, no matter what. So back to the OM-5, it's exactly what everyone said it was going to be. It takes everything from the EM1 Mark III and puts it in the smaller body. We all hoped and heard it was going to be the OM-1 sensor, but that certainly was wishful thinking. I kind of doubted that, but the OM-1 just came out earlier this year, so it's not a previous model. It's very much the current model, the current flagship model. The biggest and really only important change in the OM-5 is the processor. The camera shares the processor from the EM1 Mark III. Obviously, it ports everything in there. And I believe these two are the only two cameras that have the TruePic 9 in all of Olympus and OM's lineup. The amazing thing about this processor is that it is powerful enough to add a lot of the features from the EM1X, minus the AI tracking features, I think. If you want to learn more about those features that were added into the OM-5 from the EM5 Mark III, it's starting to get jumbled. I highly advise you to watch Peter Forsgård's video about the OM-5. He really breaks it down nicely. Now, this camera's priced at $1,200. I'm indifferent about this price, honestly. After sitting and really thinking through things and listening to several commenters, OM Digital Solutions, or OM Systems, they really don't need to sell as many units to be profitable. They're significantly smaller than they used to be, and they're significantly smaller than a majority of these other camera manufacturers. And they probably needed something just to push out so they could sell units, honestly. As much as I hate on this camera, it's probably going to sell, especially in Europe and Asia, where smaller bodies and lenses are typically an important feature to have. Weather sealing is nice, but I don't believe that it's $1,200 nice. I do know that the EM5 Mark III was released also at $1,200 price point, so it keeps with that tradition. Now in 2022, I really do think that there are much better options for people. I think, like I said earlier, I think if I was looking for a budget camera, I think that option really lies in the R10. The Canon R10 is cheaper by $300 for the body alone and $200 cheaper with the kit lens. Of course, this is comparing against the OM-5 body alone. The R10 has slightly more megapixels. It only shoots slower. It only shoots at 23 frames per second versus 30. The R10 actually has more focus points. It has 651 across 90% of the sensor versus the OM-5's 121 across 70% of the sensor. The R10 has a much better battery life. It has better video, and the R10 also has better animal tracking autofocus. It actually has animal tracking autofocus. So in this price range, the OM-5 is a bit outclassed in a lot of regards. Sure, there's a lot of those fun and very useful features that Olympus cameras are known for, but honestly, a majority of the users aren't going to be using those features. Some will. I'm not going to say everyone, but I guarantee you most will not. So anyway, continuing the comparison of the R10 to the OM-5, the OM-5 is slightly smaller and slightly lighter. It also has IBIS, so if you're shooting in low light, that could be a factor, which could still be offset with the larger sensor from the R10. But if you're shooting more telephoto, you should be more concerned with the stabilization in the lens versus the body and the body, as IBIS doesn't really help that much in telephoto focal lengths anyway. Not compared to having OIS in the lens anyway. We can in the comparison side of things, we can even go slightly more expensive. The Canon R7 is only $1,500, $300 more, and that camera definitely outclasses the OM-5 in every single way. Again, outside of those specific Olympus features, the R7 maybe has a little less with those like live ND, high res and handheld high res or whatever. But The Canon R7 has the pre-burst mode, which was in Olympus cameras for a very long time, pretty much since the EM1 Mark II in 2016. There's a lot more camera manufacturers that are adding this feature. The R7 even sustains that continuous autofocus at 30 frames per second with tracking. If wildlife is your thing, then honestly, so is the R7, because the R7 does a much better job even compared to the OM1. The biggest weakness, though, for the RF mount is the number of lenses available. This is going to be the biggest strength of the OM-5 for now. But if size isn't an issue and price is the biggest hurdle, a $100 adapter from Canon really opens up the R10 and the R7 to a slew of EF lenses that'll tide you over until more RF lenses are released. The beauty of adapting EF lenses on these bodies, on these APS-C RF mount bodies, is you don't really lose, no, you don't lose any of the features. Would I recommend this camera? No. Not unless you're absolutely dead set on grabbing an EM5 Mark III sequel. If you are trying to stay in the OM family and you're okay with buying used, and having a slightly larger body, I'd honestly grab the EM1 Mark III over the OM5. I'm seeing used copies go for less than $900 here in the States anyway. The EM1 Mark III is a very good camera at that price point. It's very much a cheap Micro Four Thirds Pro camera with all the features that's in the OM5, with the addition of having 2 dual SD card slots, USB-C charging, and an overall much better body and handling experience. If you don't need those features that are in the EM1 Mark III or OM5, I'd grab the EM1 Mark II for less than $500. That's still a phenomenal camera. I still use that camera today, especially for photos. No getting around to it. I truly do feel that the EM1 Mark II was the last great Olympus camera, but I'll talk more about that in another video. There was something else. Oh, the body. I almost forgot to mention that it's the OM5, the body is still plastic. That sucks. I hate that the first 2 EM5s had full magnesium bodies. I kind of wish that they at least did what Panasonic did with the G85 and the G95, where the front plate is made of magnesium. So if you do drop your camera, it can withstand falls significantly better. And heavy lenses won't feel like it's flexing the mount. I also wish that they used a magnesium bottom plate for the tripod mount. The EM5 Mark III and has a history of breaking. The tripod mount has a history of breaking, but they are saying that it's reinforced, but to me, plastic is still plastic. I'm pretty harsh on my camera bodies, so I wouldn't even consider carrying that camera around. Since the OM5 does share all the internals from the EM1 Mark III, I think they should consider updating the EM1 Mark III with all the video features from the OM5. They're literally the exact same internals, so just add the unlimited record thing and whatever that vertical video thing. I don't know, I would never really use that, but it's a feature that could rightfully be in this camera, in the EM1 Mark III. So that's pretty much everything I have to say about the OM5. I've already shared what I think the OM5 should have been, so you could watch those if you're interested. There is some news about the OM systems that's nothing stamped, but a conversation shared on 43rumors.com that I highly recommend that you guys check out. This video is probably too long as it is, and I got to get back to work, so I'll save it for the next one. So until then, thank you again for stopping by. I really appreciate it. Have a great day.